Hi YouTube. I'd recorded a video this morning expanding on a few thoughts about the Paris attacks and also responding to some comments left on my last video about that. And I uploaded it, and for some reason the audio is all messed up. So most of it seemed to be salvageable, so what follows is the rest of that, the video that I recorded this morning. Hopefully it will upload properly this time. GeoAngle had actually posted a fairly comprehensive comment. I would invite people to go and read it there. He does have a military communications background, and so, he expanded quite a bit on the differences in different Arab and Muslim regions. He also said that he recognized that I had sort of referenced that not all Muslims have the same beliefs or are all terrorists, but he felt that I underplayed it. I don't think so, but let me correct the record if that is the case. And I definitely recognize that the vast majority of Muslims are nonviolent people. I can't necessarily speak to their level of belief in the Quran. However, there have been surveys done where they've asked different Muslim populations, and generally speaking, well over 50% of the Muslim population in many Western cultures have responded that they believe that Sharia law should be applicable, that they do believe that in the global dominance of Islam, that Islam should take over global dominance. So that's going to relate to a point that I want to make at the end of this video. But I also wanted to respond to a comment left by Live Life, and that is that he didn't think that our foreign policy has anything to do with the terrorist attacks. And I'm not saying that that is the sole cause of the terrorist attacks, but to pretend that these things operate in a vacuum, I think would be rather silly and very naive. And again, that would speak to completely ignoring what the intelligence officials, these people that we pay a lot of money to and expect to go into dangerous areas and get information that we can't otherwise glean for ourselves, are telling us. And so I think we have to recognize, obviously, when you go into another country and do things that, even if it's something that just they perceive to be aggressive and self-serving, you have to have a recognition that there's going to be a term that I think was invented by the CIA, blowback from that. So I don't think that we can fool ourselves into believing that this isn't a component. It's not the only component. I heard recently that our new defense minister in Canada is sort of saying that we could have negotiated with ISIS years previously if we'd seen fit to do that. I'm a little bit concerned again about naivete when these are the kind of people who burn people alive, and their negotiating skills are not. They're not very compassionate, it doesn't appear, and to think that we can negotiate with these people might be a little bit naive. But I think it's also a mistake to pretend as though, as Sean Hannity likes to say, we weren't at war with them, they were at war with us. Generally speaking, I don't think any of this stuff happens in a vacuum. As I'm watching a lot of comments and different memes on my Facebook, which always concerns me, I hate these memes, especially when it has to do with something so serious. I see attitudes from every end of the spectrum. I see a lot of attitudes put forth that, of course, the vast majority of Muslims are nonviolent, and this is not being done in their name. And that we need to have compassion for people, and we should just take any refugees possible. But then it goes all the way towards the other end of the spectrum of the typically sort of redneck, just kill them all, pave the place over sort of sentiment. And it seems to me that generally speaking, reason lands somewhere in the middle. Obviously, compassion lands somewhere in the middle. Because you have to be compassionate to yourself as well. You have to protect yourself first. Country is no good to anyone if they allow themselves to be overrun and become war-torn themselves. And so somewhere in the middle, I think, generally lies reason. Reza Aslan, I'm probably butchering his name, he's also made some of the circuits discussing these things, and has made some very good points, similar to what GeoAngle referred to in his comment, in explaining that this is not a Muslim problem, that there are regions, Saudi Arabia and certain other regions have far more of a militant Islamist type problem, but there are many of the most Muslim countries actually have fairly liberal policies when it comes to how women are treated, and of course don't seem to promote and manufacture terrorist cells within them and that sort of thing. And again, I think that's that's a valid thing to point out. And certainly I think it's dangerous to demonize all Muslims, of course, because what ends up happening is you end up in promoting terrorist acts against innocent, peaceful people when you do that, burning down their mosques and endangering their lives otherwise. However, there is a caution, I think, to be had here, especially with regards to the vast numbers of Muslim refugees coming into Western cultures, and that is, I think multiculturalism is something that's taken far too lightly. I think that we engage in this notion of multiculturalism without a proper respect for what it really means, the differences in and of cultures. And especially when you allow a bunch of people to come into your country and they don't immediately have to plug into the social and political and business or work aspects of your culture, right? And in other words, when you take in refugees and you subsidize their lives, they can sort of remain closed off and remain within their own culture, within your culture. And I don't think it should be downplayed, the fact that, again, the majority of Muslims polled, even those who are in Western countries, support the idea that Sharia law should supersede constitutional law, and they do believe that Islam should overtake the world, that the world should be under Islamic law, and that's kind of just obvious. If you believe in that faith, if you believe in that system of law, then of course you're going to suggest that it should encompass everyone. And I think we need to be having a dialogue. I think that's the point that I'm trying to make in this video, is multiculturalism. You can't just smash civilizations together. You need to be having a dialogue. And I think we need to have a dialogue about Western values. And keep in mind, the Western values are not looked upon very favorably by a lot of these cultures. They see us as too promiscuous and too flaunting and too, right? There's a lot of aspects of our culture that they shun. Some of the older feminists like Germaine Greer have pointed this out, that we have nothing to offer them when it comes to trying to appeal to some of these cultures to change, for instance, the way in which they treat women. That we have nothing to offer them because they look on us as basically prostitutes and junkies, drug addicts, and alcoholics. And I think we need to have a real conversation about what liberty and freedom means, and about the aspects of multiculturalism that are dangerous, the aspects of Western culture that are non-negotiable. And I think just accepting swarms and swarms of people without having that dialogue is very, very dangerous. So I think, once again, I'm always driven towards communication, towards dialogue, towards respectful treatment of other people, engaging people, and I don't see this as anything different. But what concerns me, again, is I think we're engaging in some of this stuff without any dialogue. So on the one hand, just take in swarms of refugees without engaging in a dialogue about Western values and what's sort of expected of them, while we will respect their cultural dress and their customs and that sort of thing. We need to have a dialogue about what liberty and freedom means. And then, of course, all the way on the other side, having a discussion, an open discourse with some of our more militant people here about foreign policy and what it means to be a respectful nation among nations, but also with some of our fellow citizens when it comes to respect for other human beings, especially those who've done nothing wrong, innocent people who end up being collateral damage in this sort of just pave the place over mentality. And finally, I'll wrap up with this. I think that there is room in this discussion for us to have a little bit of a chat with people of other religions, particularly the Christians among us. In Western secular democracies, there still is a sentiment amongst people of different faiths, particularly Christians in America, that the country was founded on Christian values, and that the legal system is reflective of those Christian values, etc., etc., etc. And there's, of course, all kinds of debate about that, what the founding fathers' true intentions were, and that sort of thing. I think even though the Christians tend not to be as militant in terms of violence, they are sometimes as militant when it comes to other social issues, and, you know, particularly those surrounding gay and lesbian rights and other things. I think we need to have a dialogue with all religious peoples about empiricism. In other words, it's fine to have a faith, etc., but when it comes to the ways in which we govern ourselves and the laws of the land, I think there should be a bit of an empirical requirement if you're going to suggest that the laws of the land should be reflective of your particular faith. In other words, you should be able to demonstrate that your faith is an accurate representation of the real world, the world around us, the natural world. And if you can't do that, then I think we need to look elsewhere for the rationale behind the laws of governance that we all accept and adhere to. In other words, you're going to have to show your work. And I think obviously any system of law should be arrived at empirically, rationally, philosophically, reflecting of the truth, of the nature of our existence, our reality. And when you have a world full of religions that are pretty much all mutually exclusive, not just with any other particular religion, but with all other religions, then even if there's any that are true, there could only pretty much be one that's true, which would mean that all the other ones and all the other systems of laws arrived at through those religions are done so in error. And they are not reflective of the nature of our reality, but probably primitive superstitions. And we need to be better than that, and we need to demand better than that. And it seems to me that atheists are very much the minority globally, and that means we need to make our voices heard. We need to speak out and demand a rational, empirical approach to the ways in which we govern ourselves and the ways in which we treat one another. And to point out, if nothing else, the exclusivity amongst all these different religions, and to demand that if someone's going to expect us to live by the dictates of their faith, that they demonstrate that their faith is true, that it represents the nature of our existence. And if they can't do that, then I think we need to default to rationality, and I think a default to liberty and individual personal freedom is a good place to start, because at least it's kind of a Hippocratic oath, you know, first do no harm approach to things. And I think we can easily develop a rational approach to the different laws and ways in which we treat one another. Let me know, as always, what you think. Thanks for watching.